If you are a casual fan of Little People, Big World, you might think the Roloff family story is mostly about Matt and Amy and the older twins, Zach and Jeremy. You might think the farm story is mostly about the failed sale to Zach and the never-ending listings and price drops. You might think the next generation of Roloffs is mostly about Zach and Tori's 3 kids in Washington and Jeremy and Audrey's family making cute Instagram content from their own home. And you would be missing completely one of the most important stories in the Roloff family right now. Because while everyone else was busy fighting about the farm, walking away from the farm, leaving the show, and starting new chapters somewhere else, 2 people quietly moved on to Roloff Farms and made it their home. 2 people who never tried to be famous, who never tried to be the center of attention, who never tried to fight for ownership of anything, just settled into the property and started working. Their names are Jacob Roloff and Isabel Roloff. And they are, in 2025 and 2026, the only Roloffs actually living on Roloff Farms. They are the quiet ones. They are the ones who do not appear on Little People, Big World. They are the ones who are not in the headlines for fights or breakups or podcast drama. And they are, by every measurable standard, the reason the farm is still functioning at all right now. Tonight on LPBW Update, we are telling the story that gets buried under all the louder Roloff drama. The story of Jacob and Isabel, the youngest Roloff son and his wife, the unexpected heroes of the Roloff Farms saga. Let us start with Jacob. Jacob Roloff is the youngest of the 4 Roloff siblings. He was born in 1997. As of this recording, he is 28 years old. He is the only one of the 4 siblings who does not have dwarfism, which made his childhood on a reality television show about a family with dwarfism a particularly complicated experience. Jacob has spoken openly over the years about how difficult it was to grow up on Little People, Big World. He left the show as a teenager. He distanced himself publicly from the production. He criticized the way reality television had shaped his childhood. He went through a period of significant tension with his family, particularly around the show itself. He spent years building his own identity outside the Roloff name. He worked, he traveled, he explored, he wrote, he found his way, and eventually he met Isabel. Isabel Sophia Roloff, born Isabel Rock, grew up in a different part of the country. She is artistic, she writes. She has, since marrying into the Roloff family, built her own Substack newsletter called Starting Somewhere, where she writes about life on the farm, motherhood, and the experience of joining one of the most filmed families in America. She is thoughtful. She is private in some ways and very open in others. She and Jacob got married in 2019. The wedding was held at Roloff Farms, which was significant given Jacob's complicated relationship with the show and the property. By marrying on the farm, Jacob signaled something important. He had not entirely walked away from his family. He had, in some ways, come back to it, just on his own terms. Now, here is where the story gets interesting. As the older Roloff siblings, Zach and Jeremy, were getting increasingly tangled up in the farm sale drama from 2021 onward, Jacob and Isabel were quietly moving in the opposite direction. They were moving toward the farm, not away from it. In 2022, they made the decision to move on to the property. At first, they did it in the most humble way possible. They lived in a fifth-wheel camper on a plot of land beside the farm. They were saving money. They were figuring out their next steps. They were keeping their lives simple while they decided what they wanted to do long-term. Mateo, their son, was a baby then. They were a small family in a small camper on a big farm, surrounded by all the cameras and chaos of a Roloff Farms operating at full speed. The fans noticed them, but did not pay much attention. They were not on the show. They were not in the family drama. They were not at the center of the action. They were just there, quietly, with their baby and their camper. But something started to happen, slowly. Matt began to rely on Jacob more. Jacob, who had once distanced himself from his father over the show, started taking on real responsibility on the farm. He worked the land. He learned the pumpkin operation. He developed skills that none of his older siblings had ever fully invested in. And by 2023, Matt was telling fans during a public Q&A on the farm that Jacob and Isabel would be moving into the old farmhouse, the house Matt had raised his children in, the very same house that had been at the center of the failed sale to Zach, the very same house that had been listed for $4 million and then for $2,895,000. That house. Jacob and Isabel were going to live in it. That announcement was, in retrospect, one of the most significant moments in the Roloff Farms story, because it signaled, quietly, that Matt had given up on selling the main house to a stranger and had decided to keep family in it after all. Just not the family everyone had expected. Not Zach, not Jeremy, Jacob, the one who had publicly walked away from the show, the one who had been the most critical of the family business, the one who, by every conventional measure, seemed like the least likely candidate to inherit the family legacy. He was the one who got the house. Or, more accurately, he was the one who got to live in it as a renter while his father still legally owned it. Because, and this is important, Jacob does not own the farm. Isabel made that very clear in a TikTok post in late November of 2025. Fans had been speculating that Jacob had effectively taken over the property. Isabel set the record straight in characteristic fashion. He did not get the farm, she said. They live on the property along with Matt, who owns it still. They rent their house and Jacob works there full time. Isabel cares for the animals. That was her statement. Direct, unambiguous, no mystery. They are not owners. They are family members who happen to be the ones keeping the operation running. And keeping it running they are. In another TikTok post from the same period, Isabel shared something that took the fan base by surprise. Jacob, she said, had grown 60,000 pounds of pumpkins on the farm in 2025. 60,000 pounds. That is not a hobby. That is not a side project. That is a serious agricultural operation. The pumpkin patch, which has always been the financial engine of Roloff Farms, was being run in 2025 primarily by Jacob Roloff, the youngest son, the one who had walked away from the show, the one who had been the family question mark for years. He had become, without anyone really noticing, the actual farmer of Roloff Farms. He was growing the produce. He was raising the animals with Isabel. He was managing the operations. He was making it all work. And he was doing it quietly. No fanfare. No reality television cameras. No Instagram drama. Just 60,000 pounds of pumpkins and a baby and a wife and a farm that, against all odds, was still functioning. Isabel, in that same TikTok and in her writing on her Substack, has been clear about something else too. She and Jacob hope to keep the farm alive as long as they have anything to do with it. That sentence, in the context of everything that has happened, is one of the most quietly powerful things any Roloff has said in the last 5 years. Keep the farm alive. Not sell it, not flip it, not develop it. Keep it alive. Keep the structures Matt built. Keep the pumpkins growing. Keep the animals fed. Keep the legacy going. While Zach and Jeremy were exiting the farm story, while Matt was trying to sell it, while Caryn Chandler was building a dream home with Matt on the property, Jacob and Isabel were quietly committing themselves to its preservation. They had no contractual claim to it. They had no inheritance guarantee. They had no public negotiating position. They just had work and love for the place, and a young son who was growing up running around the same fields his father had grown up on. Mateo Roloff, Jacob and Isabel's son, was born in 2022. He is now around 3 years old. He is growing up on Roloff Farms. He is, in many ways, the third generation of Roloffs to grow up on the property, after Matt's generation and the 4 siblings generation, and he is doing it in a smaller, quieter, less televised way than his older cousins did. The cameras that filmed Zach and Jeremy and Molly and Jacob growing up are not filming Mateo. He is having a more normal childhood than his father did. He is running around with the animals. He is eating in the kitchen of the house his grandfather built. He is, in every meaningful sense, the future of Roloff Farms, even if that future is still legally and financially uncertain. There is something deeply ironic and deeply beautiful about the way this has unfolded. The son who left the show, who criticized the family business, who walked away from the reality television industrial complex, is now the son who is keeping the original farm alive. The son who never wanted to be famous is the son who is, in the end, doing the work that Matt himself spent decades doing. Jacob has, without any fanfare, become the agricultural heir to Roloff Farms. He has not been declared the heir. He has not been promised the property. He has not signed any deal. But he is, by his actions, building the case that he is the one who deserves it. The fans have noticed. The conversations on Reddit and on Facebook have shifted. Where once people assumed Zach or Jeremy would be the one to take over, more and more people are now saying out loud what has become increasingly obvious. Jacob and Isabel should be the future of Roloff Farms. Jacob and Isabel are the ones doing the work. Jacob and Isabel are the ones with the commitment, the skills, and the vision to keep the place going. There is also the question of what Jacob's relationship with his father has become through all of this. The boy who once walked away from his family has, in his adulthood, become one of the people Matt relies on most. They work together. They make decisions together. They share the daily rhythms of a working farm. They have, in their own way, found each other again. And the relationship between Matt and Jacob, which once seemed impossibly fractured, is now arguably the strongest father-son relationship in the Roloff family. That is a remarkable inversion. Zach, who was once the closest to Matt, who once dreamed of inheriting the farm, is now the most distant. Jacob, who was once the most distant, is now the closest. The Roloff family map has been redrawn in ways nobody could have predicted when the show was at its peak. What does the future hold for Jacob and Isabel? The honest answer is that it depends on what Matt decides. If the farm sells to an outside buyer, Jacob and Isabel will have to make a hard choice. They could continue working on the property as employees of new owners, or they could leave. If Jeremy and Audrey buy the farm, Jacob and Isabel's situation will depend on whatever arrangement gets worked out with the new family ownership. And if Matt, in some unexpected twist of the story, ultimately decides to sell or transfer the farm to Jacob and Isabel, then the story comes full circle in the most fitting way possible. The youngest son. The one who never asked for it. The one who just showed up and worked. That would be the kind of ending that real life rarely delivers, but that this particular story almost seems destined for. Isabel's writing on her Substack, Starting Somewhere, gives us some glimpses into how she and Jacob are thinking about the future. She has written about wanting to keep the farm alive. She has written about the legacy. She has written about the experience of becoming a parent on Roloff Farms, of teaching her son the things her husband learned in the same place. The writing is thoughtful. The writing is grounded. It does not have the tone of someone angling for a public payoff or trying to manipulate the narrative for personal gain. It has the tone of a woman who genuinely loves the place she is living and is genuinely trying to figure out how to be a good steward of it. That posture in the Roloff world is rare, and it is part of why so many fans have started to root for Jacob and Isabel quietly but persistently. The big lesson in all of this, I think, is that the loudest stories are not always the most important stories. While everyone was paying attention to the Matt and Caryn engagement, the Matt and Zach farm fight, the Amy and Chris anniversaries, and the broader drama of the Roloff family, two quiet people were doing the actual work of keeping the farm alive. They were not posting selfies for clout. They were not getting into Instagram fights. They were not appearing on the show. They were just working. Day after day, pumpkin after pumpkin, Mateo growing up among the animals in the fields, Isabel writing about the experience on her Substack, Jacob doing the kind of hard, unglamorous farm work that does not make for exciting television, but absolutely makes for a real life. They are, in their quiet way, the closest thing the Roloff family has to its original spirit. The spirit of Matt and Amy and 4 small kids on a farm in Oregon, before any of this was famous, before any of the cameras came, before any of the drama, just family, just work, just love of the land. So I want to hear from you. Do you think Jacob and Isabel deserve to eventually own Roloff Farms? Or do you think the property should go to Jeremy and Audrey if they make a serious offer? Do you think Jacob's quiet farming legacy is being underappreciated by fans? Or are you seeing the same things I am? And do you think Mateo will grow up on the farm? Or do you think the property will eventually pass out of the family entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and I want to know where you land on this. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to LPBW Update, and ring the bell for our weekly Roloff family stories. We are committed to bringing you the truth, the timeline, and the stories the bigger outlets are not telling. I will see you on the next one.